Good evening. So we've advertised this webinar in various places. Some places very heavy AAT focus, where perhaps they know me, and some are very practice focused, where perhaps they don't know me. So I thought we'd do a bit introduction both me and Natasha. So my name is Nick Craggs. I'm AAT Distance Learning Director at First Intuition. So as you imagine, as the name says, I don't do anything other than distance learning. I don't do anything other than AAT. I studied AAT and then I did run my own practice, but this was quite some time ago. And then whilst I was running my own practice, I decided I want to do my chartered exams. And to do that, you've got to go and work for a firm of chartered accountants. And they were not so keen on me running my own practice at the same time as working for them and charging a lot less than them. So I knocked it on its head and then I got into teaching. So I've not had my own practice license for 10 years, 12 years, a long time. So this is why we have Natasha here. Now, Natasha does have a practice license and does run her own practice. So if I could just ask you, Natasha, just to give us a brief overview of your business as it is now. Just unmute yourself.
Ah, there we are. You wouldn't let me unmute myself. Good evening, everybody. Okay, so I have a bookkeeping practice where I kind of just do bookkeeping. I have studied through AAT level 2 and level 3 and a couple of units of level 4. And that's what I do as my day job now. I run my own bookkeeping practice. Cool.
Now, I've known Natasha for 10 years now, it must be at least. But I got, I got in touch with you, Natasha, when you started studying bookkeeping. What was it that made you want to become a bookkeeper?
It's the freedom. Basically, when you work full time, you're always working on somebody else's business. When you're a bookkeeper, you're working on your own business. You've got your own hours you can do. You can choose who you want to work with and how you want to work. And bookkeeping, I love fixing problems, and bookkeeping is where 9 times out of 10 people come to you with bookkeeping messes and you fix. and that's brilliant. It's a really good day job.
So that was the actual end goal to start when you started studying bookkeeping and accountancy, is specifically to work for yourself. It wasn't something that you started studying accountancy and bookkeeping and then you thought, I am going to work for myself.
At the time, I was working as an accounts manager, and for me, when starting studying bookkeeping, it opened the doors to the fact that I can actually do this for myself rather than somebody else. And at the end of the day, you work all those hours and you put all in the effort, but you're actually giving somebody else profit. You're giving somebody else their goal. You're not actually fulfilling yours. So it kind of opened the doors to actually saying that I wanted to run my own practice and do work for me and make money for me and my family.
So, I mean, probably one of the reasons why everyone is here, what are the best bits about running your own practice?
The freedom of choosing where I want to work, how I want to work, what hours, work with who I want to, and actually charging what I want to do, and actually having the money at the end of the month is mine. After I've paid my subscription bills to software providers and various other things you have to do, it's my money. It's not going to the employers. It's fantastic. Obviously, you have to make sure you pay your tax bills as well as part of being self-employed, but it is nice feeling that anything that you earn and the money it is yours. So it's fantastic.
Now, obviously that's the good points. Let's be realistic here. Okay. There must be some drawbacks. What are the challenges you have in running your own practice?
Clients thinking that if you work strange hours, then you're available strange hours as well. They kind of think that sometimes that you're still employed by them, so that they dictate to you what you should do. Choosing the wrong clients as well, that's the bad thing as well. When you start a relationship with a client, sometimes you think it's fantastic, and going down the road you realize that they're not the clients for you. I suppose the worst thing as well is if you're a sole trader like me, it could be the isolation. So you're not working as a team, you are actually the team. So it has its benefits, but it also has a lot of negative, and that's why a lot of these community groups that you see online now are so valuable for sole traders, and there's a few really good ones out there that really sort of boost you up when you're low, and celebrate your highs as well.
So after having these challenges, what would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned?
Stick to your gut feeling. If something's not right, then it feels not right, then it's definitely not right. You can kind of gauge that. I think this is my 4th year now as a sole trader working for myself, and in those 4 years I've learnt through doing everything wrong how to do everything right. The main thing is cost. Never give clients discounts. Why should they? Know your worth, know your value, and things like that. I think the worst mistake was me taking on the wrong client and having to deal with getting rid of that said client and losing confidence because of that said client. I should have left my stuck to my gut feeling at the beginning and not even signed them up as a client.
Yeah, I mean, when I did run my practice, that was one of the things I learned. It's very, very easy to think every new client is great stuff, and it's not all the case. You want the clients to make money.
I think it's desperation. When you start in business yourself, you want to grab every opportunity to take as much business as you want. But in that case, you sort of forget your morals and forget what you stand for. And when you do that, that's when you pick the wrong clients. Yeah.
I totally agree. Right, so say when we do have some questions, and if you do want to ask questions, please do. We will come to them. We're not ignoring them. But if you were to give someone who wants to start out, starting their own accountancy or bookkeeping practice, what 3 bits of advice would you give them if they are considering it?
Okay, price sensibly. So if you cost things out, make sure you don't cost per hour. Hourly rate is so dinosaur now. It's all to do with value price. So the value of the time you've taken to learn the subject, how much you know about the software, how much you know about the tax implications, how much you up to do CPD. So value your pricing, make sure you do it right in the first place. Number 2, choose the software that works for you and your client. And don't be afraid to use kind of shortcuts such as software like Decks that digitizes everything, because it's all going to be MTD compatible and things like that. So make sure you use the software that's right for you and your client. And the final thing is stick with what you enjoy doing. So if you just like doing bookkeeping, say, but you don't like doing payroll, don't offer payroll. There is so much business out there that you can specialize in one area. And I think at the moment, with Making Tax Digital coming in force, we've both for VAT now as normal, and ITSA coming in, which is for income tax self-assessment. Making bookkeeping is going to be a very powerful place for gaining new clients and work. And having just bookkeeping qualification, you're going to be swamped.
Would it possibly expand a bit further about value pricing? Because I think it's a really exciting concept. Well, it's not a concept, it is actually a thing. But I was very guilty of back in the day. It was 12 quid an hour for bookkeeping. And I am aware that the faster you got, the less money you earned.
Yeah, so value pricing, it means, so every time you do a piece of work, it could be a VAT return. It's not just actually completing all the bookkeeping transactions. It's the fact that it's all like, say, 20 odd years experience you're paying for, the fact that you know how to check that certain items are 0 rated, certain things are reverse charge. So for me, I do a lot on transactional base. So if, say, somebody has bank transactions of, say, 300 a month, then it'll be sort of like around 300 pounds a month fees. So it's all knowing your worth and showing your value. You're actually being a part of their business and helping them grow, and they're outsourcing bits that they can't do and don't like doing. So you're adding value back to them by providing a really good service.
Cool. Yeah, it just makes so much more sense. But I always was very much charge them X amount per hour, and then I got really good, got slick systems, and I wasn't earning as much.
Yeah.
Now I've got a couple of questions. I'm going to go to the chat box because there's quite a few mounting up already. And one of these, the first one is, where do you find your customers? Because that was always the one I struggled with. I put business cards through the local business centres letterbox and advertised in the Yellow Pages. I don't even think Yellow Pages is a thing nowadays. Anyway, how do you pick up customers? And the second question is, what's your view on having a website or not?
Okay, so to find customers can be ideally recommendations through family, friends, people you know, community groups on Facebook. Facebook is a really powerful tool for finding clients, showing your expertise in areas such as community groups, support groups. That's really good. Also, finding clients, you can volunteer in places to do work. So community groups such as scout groups, things like that, they're always looking for treasurers. It's a great place to put your feet through the door, and then your knowledge is then being shown out through the members in there that you are a bookkeeper or an accountant and can do X, Y, and Z. I tend to find, because I do bookkeeping, I have a lot of clients who are already accountants or bookkeepers, and I do their work. And through Facebook groups that, well, one of them that I run, I actually find clients quite easily through that. But word of mouth is so powerful. And the second question was websites. Websites, I'm on an and I have one, but I don't use it. I find more being present on social media is more powerful. So, and not just doing business stuff, showing the personal side of you as well, so that you are your brand. It's all to do with brand awareness. So making sure, like my company, Bewitching Bookkeeping, is on LinkedIn, it's on Facebook, and it's ever present. It's doing something. It's showing things like little tips and things like that, free bits as well. Whereas websites are kind of bit stagnant because you've still got to get people to go to your website in the first place, unless you've got things on websites such as tips and mail shots. Then I would just stick with social media.
Cool. And just whilst we're on this subject, what are your thoughts on LinkedIn? I know you do it. Do you feel it benefits you or not?
LinkedIn's a scary place, to be honest. There's a lot of people in there, but you only see what they want you to see, so it's not the full-sided picture. Be bold, be brave, use your hashtags. Hashtags is a big thing for LinkedIn, and show your interaction. I think the more people who show the personal side in LinkedIn, the more engagement they get, the more follow-ups they get, the more callbacks, the more clients they get. So don't be afraid to use it as Facebook, even though they say it's not Facebook all the time on LinkedIn, but don't be afraid to use it like that.
Cool. And just avoid the recruitment consultants who seem to bother you every 5 minutes.
Or the people who want to do your bookkeeping for you that are in a foreign country that forget you're actually a bookkeeper anyway. Yeah. And
this is a question I actually was going to ask you, but Paulette's asked it as well, is when you first started, did you go all in full-time self-employed, or did you slowly sort of wind down some employment and have some part-time work as well as your own personal self-employment?
I started off a fair few years while I was still employed, doing Saturday work for local companies doing their bookkeeping. So that included payroll, VAT returns, general bookkeeping. And that gave me the experience to sort of then register with HMRC, get all the agent codes so you can submit things, so that when I did decide to go full-time self-employed, I had my foot through the door and the connections to sort of reach out and say, I am now doing this full-time. Do you have any extra stuff you want me to do? Or is there anybody else who needs assistance? And it really does help to try and pick up something while you're still employed, so that you're not taking a leap of faith. And you're gaining experience as well in order to take on bigger things when you are sort of full-time doing it.
Yeah, and I had the same experience that I used to have a full-time job, and then I would do it on a week. I first started doing it on the weekend, and I used to play football on a Saturday and golf on a Sunday. Yeah. And I used to bookkeeping on Saturday and Sunday morning, and it would pay for Saturday nights out. And obviously now I'm married with kids, football's gone, golf's gone, Saturday nights out are gone. But it would, and it would be additional income, so it doesn't have to be sort of all or nothing. But I do know I've had stories of people who said they went full time and it was quite motivating when they went full time, because you need it to work at that point. There's no sort of safety net. But obviously, if you can gradually ease it in, it worked for me, and obviously it worked for you. The next question,
especially as a student, if you want to start off, it's a great way to keep your full-time job by doing a little part-time work as well, because it helps you then gain your experience for your practice license. It helps you sort of give you confidence to know whether you can do it rather than just leaving your employment. You might not like doing it once you leave.
Yeah. And we will get into legalities, how you do it without falling foul of the falling into the naughty pages of AAT, and not having money laundering regulations. The next one is Paulette's asked software. I know you are a massive technology fan. Can you give us an overview of the hardware and software that you use?
Okay, so for actually getting the information to me, because I am a remote bookkeeper, I don't have any clients who come to the premises, is Decks. So Decks is a imaging software, but it also converts everything to data. So it will take all the receipts from clients. They can upload it via a phone app, just like taking a selfie, or they can send it to an email, or it can do invoice fetch or Dropbox collection. It'll then go into its own little portal on Decks, and then you can convert it to data, either into spreadsheets or post it directly into other softwares. From there, I use mainly at the moment QuickBooks, Sage and Xero. So then that will post into their transactions. It'll also convert bank statements, if you get paper bank statements as well, into CSV files, which or directly push it into software. And then that's it really. And then obviously if you're doing self-assessment, you've got tax filer and things like that. But there's other things that I use, such as Accountancy Manager, which is practice management, which does emails, it records dates and deadlines and things like that. But Decks is my favorite software, hence why I won the Decks Global Challenge last year.
What was involved in that?
I was the sole practitioner who uploaded the most transactions in one period by miles, and I won £3,000 Virgin Experience vouchers.
Oh wow.
I've still got most of them to spend yet, so because lockdown shut everything down.
That's really cool. Now I'm going to jump ahead to a question, because Maddie's asked a question, and Sam, she'd like to use software like Decks, but the subscription fees are really high and doesn't seem feasible in the beginning when you start out. What advice have you got for her, when you're starting out, having all these licenses, subscriptions? Because you just mentioned you use Sage, Xero and QuickBooks.
You've got two options. You can either absorb the cost yourself, or do what most people do now, is get the client to sign up and add you as an advisor or as a user on there, which is quite reasonable. If you go through some softwares, for example, Xero, they give you a discount, which obviously then you can recharge the client whatever you want to charge. But most places, in my instance now, the client pays for the software themselves and adds me as an advisor, thus reducing my costs, and then the client still has the direct costs there applicable. Cool.
Now, nicely segueing in actually to Maddie's question, because you talk about you've got this automation, it does this, it does the bank statements, everything. What are your thoughts about the increasing automation coming into this, and what impact will this have on the bookkeeper?
I don't think it'll have anything on the bookkeeper, because you still got to control it all, and software is all not 100%. No way is 100%. Bookkeeping is all about the control of data, so you're never going to be redundant from AI. AI is only going to make your job easier for you to take on more clients, automate more, streamline your processes. With Decks, they also have another function called Decks Precision, which then analyzes how good the bookkeeping is and whether you've posted the same nominal codes to that same expense all the time. You're going to be more time to give higher value to clients, with it being automatic and things like that. It's going to help you be higher. I don't know how to put this. It's only more benefit for the bookkeeper, more automation, because you're having more time to do things.
Yeah.
long time is when you sat at Sage 50 typing every single supplier invoice in manually, and then you have to keep the big old folders on the shelf. Now it's all digitized, and that document, that one picture, stays with that transaction all the time historically with that data, and it's going to save a lot of time and effort, and it's also eco-friendly when you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the days when the sole net worth of a bookkeeper was how many invoices you could bang through Sage in an hour. Yeah. And it was like a competition, and it's not like that now. Next question is, other than not being able to spend your vouchers, how did COVID and lockdown affect your business?
It grew mine.
It grew yours.
Yeah. With stopping going to things like networking and things like that, and the demand for people wanting to get their grants and COVID benefits that the government was handing out, everybody needed up-to-date figures and where they were with accounts. And a lot of my clients were e-commerce clients, so their businesses quadrupled while COVID happened because they were still unable to trade. So the business grew, which I think a lot of people have found that as well. I think now it's sort of slowing down now that the cost of living is getting higher. It's going the other way again now. People are struggling to pay bills and understanding the value of actually having somebody else do their bookkeeping and accounts for them.
Which goes another question we had is, have you had instances where clients have not paid you?
Yeah.
And what did you do about that? Or how did you find them?
It's a delicate situation. It's whether they are not paying you because they physically just don't want to pay you, or they can't pay you. I've got one at the moment who's not paid, and it's cash flow problems. And other ones previously just physically haven't paid because they didn't want to pay. And I've sort of escalated it with letters and then sent them to the sort of the normal debt collect that everybody uses online. Still waiting to see if I get any money back. It's not the high value, but it is to me as a small trader.
Yeah. And another question is, because you say you don't visit clients, and that was a decision you made prior to lockdown, that you were going to be completely virtual?
Yeah, I wanted the freedom where I could work wherever I wanted. I didn't want a set building where people come to. Most of my clients aren't even in my area. They're all over the country, and it works well. You can still do all the compliance stuff with the video calls and making sure they are who they are and things like that. I think nowadays it's not as relevant to be on the high street and having a high street branch for clients to pop in and see you. Clients are far busy themselves. They don't want that. They want the fact that it's tickety-boo and behind the scenes kind of thing.
Yeah, which presumably saves you money in terms of not having to get premises. So it's either more profit, or you're cheaper, or maybe a bit of both.
Yeah.
Cool. So Diana's question is, if you've got no experience, how would you start a bookkeeping business? Would you suggest getting a job first, or starting out on your own?
I would definitely, first instance is, if there was jobs about, grab it. This experience is fantastic. You can't not get experience, but there is other ways of getting experience where, like I said before, the volunteering is brilliant. The fact that you could help people volunteer doing treasury jobs, things like that. Community groups, charities often want bookkeeping that they can't really afford the services for a few weeks. Anything like that. Family and friends, bookkeeping services, volunteer, do as much as you can. If there are jobs out there and you think that it's right for you, then grab them as well. Grab that opportunity to actually work in there.
Cool. Guess what? I did all my bookkeeping, started out on a program called Farm Plan, because I had access to that. And then a client says, "Can you do my bookkeeping on Sage?" I was like, "Yes, I can." And the next morning I was stood outside PC World at 9 a.m. waiting for it to open to buy a copy of Sage. Spent the entire weekend learning through Sage. And that's how I learned Sage, which perhaps is not the best way of going about it. But how long did it take you to get up to speed with Xero, Sage and QuickBooks and all the other, tax filer you mentioned?
As long as you've got your bookkeeping, your double entry nailed, then all of these softwares offer their own training courses. They're free. They're all free, so you can do like their certifications online. There's great YouTube videos. It does take a while. There's some things that you would take normal for practice, say like contras or intercompany accounts, that don't make sense on software, so you have to make it right for you. And there's other softwares that work better than others, but I think there's a lot of them that have demos, they have trials. Go out there, try some of you, especially if you've done level 2 with the computerized accounting, try some of them actually on a different software rather than Sage, because it's kind of interesting to see how that works as well in practice. And some of the terminologies are different to what you learn as well with Sage, because some of them are American, some are Australian companies, so they don't actually sound the same. Some you don't find creditors or debtors, you actually find payable, age payables or age. So it's knowing what they mean as well.
So one of the things you mentioned is knowing double entry bookkeeping. Do you still feel that is a really valuable underpinning knowledge for bookkeepers and accountants?
Yeah, I still, if I don't understand something, I'd still go to the paper and write my double entry out, because sometimes I don't trust what the software's doing. So there's a lot of things at the moment where I've said, if in doubt, write it out. So it's basically, as long as you remember the bank, the golden rules of what entries are in the debits and credits for your bank, then all the transactions work around that. I've done some really serious, complex year-end trial balances that haven't made sense because somebody else has done them and made a mistake. And I've had to actually export it, as I learnt with you doing level 3, when we did our extended trial balance. That's how I've done it to work things out, because to me, that makes more logical sense. And that's another reason why I've actually gone back to Sage, because Sage Cloud accounting is very much like your old school with your debits and credits as well. And I think some of this new software like QuickBooks and Xero, they are kind of miss that link, and they are brilliant, don't get me wrong, they are fantastic software, but I miss my knowing that the debit and credit effect. And I think I panic when I don't understand something, so that's why I have to write it on down. And I have a whiteboard on my desk with a pen where I've got a T count that's permanently right on there to just mirror it out, because it is so invaluable knowing your debits and credits. It's the underpinning knowledge of any bookkeeping and accounting.
I totally agree. It's just fundamental, no matter how far you go with your studies. Moving away from double entry bookkeeping, payroll. Now, I know you spent the day doing payroll today.
I hate payroll, yep.
Payroll. How did you get into payroll, and how would you suggest studying payroll?
Okay, so payroll I have done for, how old am I now? 45, so 27 years I've done payroll. Payroll it's really one of the undervalued parts of a bookkeeper. To me, it's quite complex. It's always changing. Softwares out there are brilliant. I learned from sort of peer learning, but I did actually do, when I took my AAT level 2, it was in 1998, and part of that was actually a payroll unit. So we had to learn the old school payroll unit in paper form there to pass your level 2. But there's some fantastic payroll courses out there at the moment. You've got the ICB, they do payroll, but the one that I really think stands out from the crowd is the CIPP, which is just payroll professionals, and it's kind of really goes in depth, but they do like a foundation, intermediary and advanced courses. If you're going to do payroll, make sure you're clued up with the general basics of payroll, and you're not afraid to ring up HRMC and ask questions as well.
Yeah, I mean, when I was worked in a accountancy practice, the partner there did say they didn't make a great deal of money on payroll, but they had to offer it because they'd just go elsewhere and they'd go to one-stop shops. Yeah. So he was always very keen that they did payroll, whether they made any money or not, because it's a really useful skill, and not everyone can do it. It does sort of set you apart.
I think for me today, I was setting up a new company that previously had a different bookkeeper, and the old bookkeeper didn't give me any information, so I was having to manually put quite a lot of employees onto payroll and work out how she calculated things, and it was a tough day. But next time the payroll will be fairly straightforward. It'll be 3 clicks. So it's as simple as that. It's the setting up process, and if you've got the time and the knowledge to do it, it's quite a nice thing to learn payroll. You actually are valuing the employees of that company as well.
Yeah, cool. Now we've had quite a few questions about what you need to do when you start your own practice. Indemnity insurance.
So there's several options. So first of all, you can either have practice license, and the practice license with most awarding bodies will include AML supervision, or you can be AML supervised directly with HMRC. So that's number one. So it's A or B. Second one is indemnity insurance. It is an imperative thing. I would not be without it and the support that they provide. It is so invaluable. It's unreal. And the third thing is ICO, register for ICO. You've got personal information on people. You need to make sure your data is protected. They are the 3 things. Now, practice license and HMC, there has been a lot of talks about that one. With the practice license, you get the support from the awarding body, but HMRC is still another good option. It's entirely up to you. It is there as long as you definitely have got indemnity insurance and ICO. That's the 3 things that you do need.
Yeah, when you get the AAT magazine or even ICAW magazine, the first thing I do is look at the disciplinary pages, because there's also some good stories in there. Mostly 90% of them are for operating without anti-money laundering regulation or not having a practice license. Always get found foul of that. Yeah. Like I said, so I know when I was practice license with AAT, they insisted I have professional indemnity insurance, which I think I only paid £50 for, and I never claimed on it, thankfully, but it wasn't the worst £50 I've ever spent, if I'm being honest.
No, see, I value mine so much. They're such a good people, the indemnity insurance. When I've had a couple of queries with clients, they've been a really good support as well. And to me, it's one of them things that if you don't have it, what will happen? You just never know what's going to happen. They don't just support you if somebody claims against you, they support you to make the right decisions in things as well, which is invaluable. And ICO, I think it's £35 a month if you pay a year, sorry, if you paid via direct debit. I think my insurance isn't that bad, but you think if somebody actually claimed against you for whatever reason, it's a small amount that you're paying for the big picture. So it's well worth it.
Definitely. Tathea's asked a couple of good questions actually about getting the practice license and do you need experience? And go on.
Yeah, the AAT, I think the AAT is 6 months experience that you need in, but they split into so many areas. So you've got to have 6 months in each of the areas that you apply for your bookkeeping license. The ICB is another one where I know this is your AAT, but this ICB one where they kind of let you do their qualification, then you can actually go out on your own. It's a different way that they teach you. So they teach you in different units kind of thing. IAB is similar. I think whatever experience, 6 months or more the better. I think the experience is where you consolidate all your knowledge that you've learned through your studies, because when you go out there, every day is still a school day. I'm 4 years into my own practice and it's still a school day for me. And there's still things every day I went, wow, I've learned something new today. Oh, whoops, I did that wrong, but I know next time what to do. Hence with like the payroll today, it took me hours, but if this person had given me this little report, it would have taken me a few minutes. But you learn something new every day. So the more experience you get, no matter how little you think it is so valuable in the long run. Yeah,
every day is a school day.
It is a school day. Yep.
Now, one of the misconceptions, I don't know if it is a misconception, tell me if I'm wrong, but do you really spend all day, every day on a hold to HMRC?
No. When you do, you pick the times that you think you can get through. Unfortunately, HMRC have been quite strange recently by taking off certain lines that help agents even more by stopping the chat and things like that. I think for me, I've been very fortunate with HMRC and sort of had only probably up to an hour wait occasionally, but I have a speakerphone. I do other things while I'm waiting. So it's not necessarily, it is bad, but not always that bad.
Yeah, could be worse then. And speaking of payroll, would you consider taking on your own employees?
This is the thing. I think I'm such a control freak now, no, to be honest. But you just don't know in the future whether you think your business grows enough that it warrants employees. It might change in 6 months. I might change my mind and say yes, but at the moment, no.
No. Speaking of the future, would you consider going as a limited company?
No. I've seen so many things in our group at the moment where people are just trying to grow their business as fast as they can take on loads of employees. But I'm there shouting from the one who's like me, who just wants to remain a sole trader on their own, doing bookkeeping. They've got no plans to make a six-figure sort of profit or anything like that. They're just happy doing what they're doing. And people need to remind that that's just fine. And I think as long as I'm not going to be near the VAT threshold. I don't want to be. So I'm happy being a sole trader and just self-employed and just paying my taxes due as normal and not limited.
Cool.
It'd be different if you had employees and you had a premises and you had clients coming to you, then maybe that would be different. I don't think clients see me any different that I'm not limited.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah.
We've got, I was planning on being till 8 o'clock, so we've got another 20 minutes. If you've got any more questions to come in, but we've had another one from Anita. When you're starting out, what software would you choose? If you let's put you on the spot. If you had to pick one. Okay.
I would probably, if going back, I would probably choose something like Sage or QuickBooks. Just the sheer fact that they remind me so much of my accounting studies, and the fact that you do proper bank reconciliations at the end where you have to close those periods, unlike Xero that can just think. For me, it makes they make logical sense. Xero is fantastic, don't get me wrong, and a lot of people find it a lot quicker, but I think that QuickBooks and Sage are probably my ones to go to.
Cool. And we mentioned about technology before, but do you have a great big computer setup, or do you sort of hot desk with a laptop? And do you have your own sort of workspace setup?
Yeah, so on my desk at the moment, I have two 32-inch curved screens. I have 3 Streamdecks. I have Elgato microphone, but then I also use my iPad Pro a lot, which does a lot of work on it as well, which is really portable. I don't tend to hot desk. I kind of sort of taken over the kitchen table basically with my screens and my Streamdecks.
Could you explain what Streamdecks are? Because I saw when you bought these on social media, and I remember thinking they were incredibly cool.
So you think of all the shortcuts that you do on your keyboard, so like to print and things like that. You can just assign buttons for that, but some of my buttons are where it'll see that a client has emailed invoices into my inbox. So with just one button, it will forward that email to Dext to put that into the clients and process it. It will then move that email into its own archive, and then it will process that document in Dext just by one button. So saving all those processes, just one button. I've got another one which will turn the Zoom video call off, or it'll turn the volume down. I've got loads of QuickBooks shortcuts. I've got Excel shortcuts. I've got all my clients linked up to Toggle, which times them. So say like I'm timing to see how long jobs take, to see if I'm still working out about my costings, then I just press a button and it times it, and then I press a button and it stops the timer. Different clients have different reports that they have each month, so each button's got that report will just generate, rather than having to do all these functions and remember where they all are. It's just a click of a button.
Cool. I really want one of them.
It's very good for things like Zoom calls where I can just stop the microphone straight away with it, or I can stop the video. It's really, really good. It is an up-and-coming bit of software for bookkeepers. There is going to be a lot of it, I think, at the shows this year, accounting shows, all about Streamdecks taking over productivity, basically, tool it is.
Cool. I get a few questions about this. So what's the best Stream Deck to buy?
The Excel version, because obviously, but although you've got, I think it's 32 buttons, you can change it. You can actually make it into loads and loads of pages. So you can have loads of profiles where it'll bring up each a different page and just keep opening pages and pages on that screen. So like on my Excel one, I've got one with shortcuts for decks, and then I can press a button and it goes into QuickBooks, press another button, and then there'll be loads of shortcuts for Xero. Press another button, and I've started setting up ones for Sage now as well. It's sort of goes on and on and on.
You've got quite a good setup there, haven't you? You put a lot of effort into that.
Too much time on my hands, haven't I, really?
Yeah. Cool. Right. Karen's asked a question, which is a difficult question, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What do you reckon setup costs would be in terms of insurance, software, equipment, fees? Okay,
so like I say, for setup costs for software and everything, recharge it to your clients when you start setting off. So either recharge it or get them to pay for it. So I would say you're looking less than £1,000 to set up. That includes either your practice license or your HRMC registration, your indemnity insurance, and your ICO. Like I say, ICO is only £35 a year, sorry, for data protection. It depends what you're going to offer. If you're going to be a bookkeeper, whether you're going to be an accountant, or whether you're going to do a bit of both. Most softwares will give you an introductory price per month, and most of them charge a month anyway.
Yeah. So you're not looking at massive upfront costs?
No.
But I assume most people, you've got to have some form of IT.
Yeah, obviously, when I started it was just a laptop, and then I bought a second screen that plugged into the laptop. My computer on my desk is only a cheap one from Curry's, but it does the job. The screens, I think, were bargains from PC World on special offer. You can do it relatively cheap. I think mainly is making sure that you save everything to the cloud. I have all of my receipts and everything saved to like Dropbox, and I pay for the Dropbox business version to cover me for my business expenses. It's fairly minimal. You can go as cheap or as expensive as you need to.
Yeah, and presumably it's not all or nothing. You can build it up over time.
Exactly, and choose what's right for you. And also, don't be afraid to think, well, try one software. If that doesn't work, don't be afraid to jump ship and go to another one. What works for one doesn't work for another, and don't be a sheep that follow everybody else. I mean, perfect example of Xero, they charge you to go to their conference. I mean, software providers, they want you to buy their software from them, but they charge you to go to the conference, which doesn't make sense, really. So
I suppose that's one of the drawbacks for software providers is now they use this software as a service model, in the fact that you pay them every month, but you're not as tied to them as if you've paid hundreds of pounds for a piece of software up front.
No, exactly. And I think now people are getting a bit more wise that there is loads of different softwares. I mean, we've run that many webinars in the Facebook group recently, showcasing smaller softwares out there that are really going to sort of take over the things. For example, like line books, they charge per line on a bank statement for doing VAT returns, which is, when you've got small clients, is really, really reasonable. So there's a lot of stuff out there.
Cool. Streamdeck's still getting a lot of love in the chat.
Yeah.
What have we got here? Now, a bit more interested with regards to software. Do you use proposal software, or have you just learnt your costings over time?
There is two main proposal softwares out there. I did try Go Proposal, which is really good. In the end, I went with Practice Ignition, which was more me, but I am actually going to start using the Bookkeepers Alliance one shortly. I see Chris is there, because he has created its own pricing software. There is some out there, and they do help take the guessing game out of it and make you more consistent and make sure that you don't creep scope. So you don't actually do more work and not get paid for it.
Well, yeah. Chris, if you want to give a link to your bit of software, that'd be fine. I should, as Chris,
he's saying
is here. he's the founder of the Bookkeepers Alliance, which is a fantastic support group for bookkeepers.
I am a member. Yeah, I'm a member of the Bookkeepers Alliance. So
yeah, I think it's a fantastic thing. Stick a link to that in chat box, Chris. That would be really appreciated.
Like I say, a lot of them charge a lot of prices, but they are really good softwares. They just, I think a lot of them aim for bigger companies that want to grow, whereas me, I'm just happy ticking along.
Yeah. Sorry, just trying to get the link to your group, Natasha. So anyway, chat where we're at. Yeah, there's Chris's link to his pricing software.
Yes.
So Louise, that's quite an open-ended question. How much do you charge clients for bookkeeping?
Okay, so bookkeeping I do on a transactional price. So it's how many transactions, because per hour, we've already discussed at the beginning of this, per hour doesn't work anymore. You can get quicker and quicker and you wouldn't, oh, there we are, thank you, my group. You wouldn't actually benefit from it. So a lot of clients say, oh yeah, I've only got a couple of, like half a dozen transactions a month, and when you go in there, they've probably got that, but they've got like 17 million different bank accounts. So I would do it on an average over 3 months of what their transactions were per 3 months, and then charge them that, because it's the amount of time that you actually have to process these transactions. Some of them might not be straightforward ones. They might be something that has to be matched against 10 or 20 invoices. They might have something that has import tax, where you then have to pull the bill through and then segregate it out and put the import tax and make sure it goes in the right boxes. So it's not just actually posting that transaction. That transaction could have millions of different implications and a million different transactions attached to that one. So that's why a post price accordingly, more, like I say, giving yourself value again.
Cool. Now, I've got a question, and you can not answer it if you want, but have you ever disengaged a client?
Yes. Yes.
Would you like to go in more detail, or?
Well, there's probably about half a dozen so far. Yeah, I think manners as well. I think a lot of people assume that they're buying your time, but they're actually just buying your professional services. So it's like when they bring you at stupid times and things like that. I suppose the one which will get a disengagement letter in the next couple of days is the fact they haven't paid me and then asked me, have I worked? Well, no, not if you haven't paid me. It's things like that. It's being firm and fair, though. You've given them the time to sort of correct the fact that they haven't paid you, but you can't do everything. I think I was listening to a discussion in another group the other day, and it was the fact that you've got to remember that you're a business as well. You're not a charity case, and everybody's going through the same kind of things we all have done for the last few years, what with COVID, now the cost of living and increases of these. We're all, even in our industry, the prices are going up, every software is going up, everything's going up. So we have to be on our toes as well when clients don't pay.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you want a professional service, paying professional prices.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, back in the day when we used to talk about pricing, and I did go down the awful charge per hour, and I don't know, minimum wage back in those days was £7, and you'd say, well, I want £15 an hour, and people go, well, that's twice the minimum wage. But I was like, well, I don't get paid when I'm on holiday. I don't get paid when I'm sick. How do you manage these periods of when you're on holiday or you're hopefully not sick?
Well, the last few weeks I've been struggling with COVID, so I've actually done the bare minimum, and now it's catch up. But the great thing is to have continuity of practice, regardless of who you actually, whether you've got a practice license or not. Have somebody who'll back you up if you are ill or things like that. So it's just one of those things. I think for me, I was so far ahead with a lot of my clients that being ill wasn't so bad. So but this week has been manic trying to catch up with everything and VAT returns. And it's knowing what you've got each month as well, and that you don't, like I've been reading somebody saying, overstretch yourself by taking on too much clients. Yeah, knowing what your capacity is and your peak times, and if you've got client with the same deadlines, making sure that you're sort of not taking too many on that same period as well.
Yeah, I know my wife, she used to work in an accounting practice, and they didn't have a good mix of clients, and they were all doing loads of tax returns. So January was mental.
Yeah.
And in February and March, they didn't really have any bookkeeping or VAT returns. And they were literally sat around reading magazines at some point because they hadn't got any jobs coming in. And it's good to have a good mix of clients. Paul, that's a good question, actually. Do your clients pay you weekly, monthly, or on a per project basis?
I have them all set up that they paid on the 1st of the month each month in advance. So those who have in bookkeeping service of April will pay on April the 1st and so on. Originally I did invoicing, but that's where you can get problems with paying. This way, if they don't pay at the beginning of the month, then direct debit doesn't come through, then you don't do the work. Simple as.
It's quite a safe way of doing it.
It is. There's that many help things out there that will help you do that now. There's obviously Go Cardless. There's Cresco that's just set up, which does direct debits as well. There's lots of systems that you can implement that really sort of reasonable to do these taking payments for you on your behalf.
Cool. Okay. We've got about another 5 minutes, everyone, if you get your questions in. But Beth's got another question. Have you ever approached another bookkeeper to be your buddy if you're a solo bookkeeper, or do you just network online?
Obviously, if you're in our Facebook group, you'll see we all support each other, and there's over 10,000 members in there. I do have a few that I really work closely with. There's a fabulous lady called Chantal, who's in most groups, and I work a lot alongside her quite a lot on lots of projects. Obviously, there's a lady who works at First Intuition who used to help me do bookkeeping as well before she became a course advisor, and she used to help me on my deck side of things. There is people out there that are willing to help, and it is good to buddy up because you can help them on some things that you know, and maybe they don't. And I've helped a lot of new bookkeepers recently, the fact that they've learned studies but they don't know how to put it in, how the software to do it, and I've been on the end of the phone helping them with that. So it is a really good thing to find a community that will help you.
So you find it's not like a competitive environment where people are like, I could take your client like that. It's everyone working together, even if they're own, separate businesses. I
think the industry's changed so much over the last 4 years with COVID and everything. I think people are now more supportive of each other, and there is enough clients to go around everybody. And like I say, there'll be abundantly more when making tax digital ITSA comes into place for income tax, where they have to do quarterly returns rather than just the annual one. Businesses will be swamped, the clients will be panicking, so everybody will get enough clients to keep them going. I think the way that you learn more is peer-to-peer support, because you get that first-hand advice of not just the software telling you, companies telling you it works like this. You actually get real person's views and help on how to do things. And like, again, that's why these good Facebook communities work.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic to hear. That's good, Miss. Do you have any peaks and troughs in terms of workloads, or any periods when it's more stressful than others?
I find I'm more stressed to, like today, putting new payrolls on and things like that. I don't think so. I think this is the whole thing about doing your own business. You plan it how you want it to do, to reduce the amount of stress and then the amount of downtime and things like that. So if you're planning downtime, it's for you personally to have time out. It's kind of roller coasted, the fact now where I think the only stressful time was when Rishi Sunak decided he was giving out grants, and clients were ringing as soon as he said that, what can I get? And I haven't even got any information yet what the grants were. I think the only thing you can't control is the government and the HMRC, what they're saying. Everything else is, when you're a sole trader and you run your own business, you have a fair element of control to stop that.
Cool. Last question for me, and this is the last time for anyone else to get the question, is, do you see yourself doing this for the rest of your life?
Yeah, I do, in a way. Yeah, I think I'd like to go more into the kind of the support side of things, the helping bookkeepers become bookkeepers, like I've previously done in a work role years ago, but in a different kind of way. The fact that show them as I do it. So maybe work alongside me, showing them what their double entry means and how to put it in practice so that they can go away and start their own business successfully.
Cool. That sounds really exciting.
Yeah. Oh, somebody's put, you can help me. Oh, bless them.
Someone's asked a question. It was related to something I was going to ask because I just remember the dark days when I was in practice.
Okay.
Is, do you register an agent first or get the client? And this is the bit I was interested in. Is registering as an agent and getting your clients allocate you the nightmare that it used to be with 64-8 forms and things like that? Has HMRC got better?
No, HMRC have got worse. They've made it even more technical. But the best thing to do, a lot of these agent things will not let you get an agent's codes now unless you've got money laundering supervision. So the first step is either you practice license with money laundering or HMRC money laundering. Then to apply, for some reason, to become an agent, you have to still do it in writing. You have to send a post off and say, I'd like to be agent in corporation tax, payroll and stuff like that. And then a lot of things you can do online, like add them, but the HMRC still probably won't let you speak to them as much unless you send a paper copy of the 68-4 in to say that you have permission to speak to that about that client. So
still doing them then.
It's still a minefield, and because they keep changing systems for making tax digital, it's still not brilliant.
I suppose that is a bond that all bookkeepers and accountants have, is that they all have to deal with HMRC and go through the trials and tribulations of that.
They all do. I'm luckily very fortunate. I did mine years ago. For some reason, I set up all my agent stuff years ago before it even got even more complex. So I was very fortunate to do that. So I would say probably if you're submitting statutory returns, such as probably payroll, VAT returns, and tax returns, I would get your agent codes up and running before you take the client, just because of how long it takes. But if you're just doing bookkeeping and just bookkeeping and maybe an accountant's doing the year end, then just get going.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Kathir's just asked, are you able to watch again? We will send the recording out of this to everyone who's registered, and I will be asking someone to put it up on YouTube because I think people will find real great value in it.
And then I'll share it in my Facebook group as well afterwards as well.
Yeah. So we've got like literally 1 minute. So
okay,
last chance, but I just want to say thank you so much, Natasha, for doing this. I really appreciate it. I think, it's far better coming from you, who's living it and doing it, as opposed to old dinosaurs like me, who was, from 10, 12 years ago.
I no worries. I like doing this. Obviously it reminds me of doing my AAT webinars years ago, so it's quite nice to do that. Yeah. And I'm laughing at Chris McCulloch's thing. He says he's got a sore head for nodding all the time, bless him.
Well, if Chris is nodding, it's all good advice.
It is. No, I appreciate you inviting me to do this. Thank you. And I think there's a link in the comments to a Facebook group. If you want any help or support from me or other members, just join it and we'll help you.
Yeah, cool. Well, I shall let everyone go. Have a good evening, everyone. And check us out on our Facebook group. We're also doing things like this, and not just helping pass exams, because I think people do find value in this. It's not just we're here to get you a certificate on the wall at the end of the day, because it's not about that. It's about changing people's lives, and it clearly has made a big difference to you, Natasha.
It has, yep. And I'm with trying to finish my level 4 before the standards change and I lose my unit.
Well, we've still got plenty of time for that.
Yep. Personal tax.
The best unit there is.
Yeah, I thought you'd say that. Right. Thank you, everybody.
Well, thanks, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.